The morning shift alarm echoed through the metal corridors of Kepler Station as Commander Tae-min walked toward the main control room. His boots made soft clicking sounds on the floor plates. Around him, the station was coming to life. Alien workers from different worlds moved through the hallways, heading to their jobs in the mining complex. Tae-min had been running this place for 3 years now. Kepler Station orbited a rocky planet far from Earth, where crews dug up rare metals that powered starships across the galaxy. The work was hard, but the pay was good. More importantly, this was one of the few places where different alien species could live and work together in peace. He stopped at a viewing window and looked out at the planet below. The brown and gray surface was covered with mining scars, but it was home to 3,000 souls. Humans made up about a quarter of the population. The rest were aliens who had come here seeking a better life. The Vithrak looked like giant insects, with 4 arms and shiny black shells. They were excellent at detailed work and could see in the dark. The Lumeni were tall beings made of living crystal, who could sing in harmonies that made beautiful music. The Nethals were gas breathers who wore special suits and helmets filled with their home atmosphere. All of them had one thing in common. They had fled from places where their kind were not welcome. Kepler Station was supposed to be safe. It was supposed to be neutral territory where everyone could work in peace. Tae-min reached the control room and nodded to Yu Jin, the chief engineer. She was bent over a computer screen, her black hair tied back in a practical ponytail. Yu Jin had a gift for fixing things that seemed impossible to repair. The station's old equipment broke down constantly, and she somehow kept everything running. "How are we looking today?" Tae-min asked. Yu Jin looked up with tired eyes. "The mining platforms are working fine. Production is up 12% from last month, but the long-range communication array is acting up again. I think we need new parts." Tae-min frowned. The communication system was their lifeline to the outside galaxy. Without it, they would be completely cut off from help if something went wrong. "Can you fix it?" "I can try. But those parts are old, really old. Some of them are from before the war. The war Yu Jin mentioned had ended 5 years ago, but its effects were still felt everywhere. The Terran Federation had fought against the Dominion Empire for control of this part of the galaxy. The Federation won, but barely. Now there was an uneasy peace, with both sides watching each other across the border. Kepler Station sat right in the middle of disputed space. Officially, it belonged to no one. That was what made it safe for refugees and workers from all species. At least that was the theory. Boram entered the control room carrying a coffee cup and a data pad. She was head of station security, a former Federation Marine who had decided she was tired of fighting wars. Her job here was supposed to be easy, settling disputes between workers and keeping the peace. The most dangerous thing that usually happened was someone drinking too much at the station bar. "Morning briefing time," Boram announced. "We had 2 minor fights last night, nothing serious. A Vithrak worker and a human miner had words about work schedules. I sorted it out." Tae-min nodded. Small conflicts were normal when different species lived together. The important thing was dealing with them before they became big problems. "Anything else?" he asked. Boram hesitated. "Actually, yes. Long-range sensors picked up something strange about 6 hours ago. Ships moving near the system. Ejika could be nothing, but you don't think it's nothing," Tae-min finished. "No, I don't. The sensor readings were weird, like the ships were trying to hide their signatures." Yu Jin looked up from her computer. "Pirates? Maybe. Or worse." They all knew what worse meant. The Dominion Empire had been quiet since the HFY War ended, but there were rumors. Stories of Dominion fleets moving in the outer systems. Reports of colonies going silent. The Federation government said these were just rumors, but people who lived on the frontier knew better. The Dominion believed in something they called species purity. They thought that different alien races should not mix together. They especially hated places like Kepler Station, where humans and aliens worked side by side. During the war, Dominion forces had destroyed dozens of mixed colonies, calling it cleansing the galaxy. An alarm suddenly filled the control room. Not the gentle morning shift alarm, but the harsh wail of the emergency alert system. Red lights flashed on every console. "What is that?" Taemin demanded. Yujin's fingers flew across her keyboard. "Proximity alert. Multiple contacts dropping out of hyperspace." The main screen changed to show the space around Kepler Station. Taemin felt his blood turn cold. 12 large shapes were appearing in the darkness, their hulls gleaming with the distinctive armor plating of Dominion warships. "Battle stations," he said quietly. Then louder, "Battle stations, all hands to emergency positions." Throughout the station, alarms began to sound. Workers dropped their tools and ran for the emergency shelters. Security teams grabbed weapons that seemed pitiful compared to what was coming for them. Boram was already on the radio, calling all security personnel to their posts. Yujin worked frantically at her console, trying to get the long-range communications working. They needed to call for help, but the nearest Federation ships were days away. On the main screen, the Dominion fleet moved into formation around the Ear Station. The ships were huge, bristling with weapons that could turn Kepler Station into scrap metal in minutes. At the center of the fleet was a massive dreadnought, its hull marked with the red and black symbols of the Dominion Empire. A communication signal came through on all frequencies. The image of a Dominion admiral appeared on the screen. He was tall and pale, with cold gray eyes and the ceremonial scars that marked him as a veteran of many battles. "Attention inhabitants of the illegal settlement known as Kepler Station," the admiral said. His voice was calm and matter-of-fact, as if he were reading a shopping list. "I am Admiral Kesseran of the Dominion Third Fleet. This facility has been designated for cleansing under Imperial Decree 4471. Taemin stepped forward. "This is Commander Taemin. Kepler Station is neutral territory under the Proxima Accords. You have no authority here." The admiral smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "The Proxima Accords are void. The Dominion no longer recognizes treaties signed with inferior governments. You have contaminated this system with the presence of multiple species living in unnatural cooperation. These are innocent people. Workers, families, children. They are an infection that must be cleansed. You have two options, Commander: surrender unconditionally and prepare for processing, or be destroyed along with your station. You have 30 minutes to decide." The transmission ended, leaving the control room in silence. Processing was the Dominion's polite word for mass murder. They would separate the humans from the aliens, then kill everyone who was not considered pure enough for their empire. "Can we fight them?" Taemin asked. Boram shook her head. "We have some mining lasers and a few old defense platforms. Against 12 warships? We might as well throw rocks." "What about evacuation?" "The transport ships can maybe carry 500 people. We have 3,000 on the station." Yujin looked up from her console. "The communication array is still down. I can't reach Federation Command or anyone else. We're on our own." Taemin thought about the children in the station school. Human kids playing with young Vithrak and Lumeni. They had never known a galaxy divided by species hatred. To them, having alien friends was normal. He thought about Krixth, the old Vithrak, foreman who told stories to anyone who would listen, and Veltar, the Lumeni crystal singer whose music had helped so many workers through hard times, and Thos, the Nethel engineer who had designed the new air recycling system that made life on the station so much better. All of them would die if the Dominion had their way. "We fight," Taemin said finally. Boram nodded grimly. "I'll organize the defense teams. We'll make them pay for every corridor." Yujin's hands moved across her keyboard. "I'll try to get the shields up to maximum power. Maybe I can overload some systems to give us a bit more protection." The next 20 minutes passed in a blur of activity. Security teams set up barricades in the main corridors. Workers who had military experience grabbed whatever weapons they could find. The aliens who could fight stood alongside the humans, preparing to defend their home. In the emergency shelters, parents held their children close. The Lumeni sang quiet harmonies to calm the frightened. The Vithrak workers used their natural ability to see in darkness to help organize the evacuation of the most vulnerable. Taemin found himself in the main corridor, watching human and alien security officers work together to prepare their defenses. These people had come from different worlds, different cultures, different species, but they were willing to fight and die together. That was what the Dominion could never understand. They saw cooperation between species as weakness. But Taemin knew it was strength. When different people worked together, they could do things that none of them could do alone. The 30 minutes were almost up when the first Dominion transport ships appeared on the sensors. They were coming in fast, loaded with soldiers ready to board the station. Taemin activated the station-wide communication system. His voice echoed. Captain Hyunwoo stood in the bridge of the UES Indomitable, watching the stars streak past as his ship traveled through hyperspace. They were heading home after a long patrol mission in the Outer Rim, and his crew was tired. It had been 6 months since they had seen Earth or any major Federation base. The Indomitable was a newer class of stealth destroyer, built for reconnaissance and fast strikes rather than major battles. Her crew of 85 was handpicked from the Federation's best officers and enlisted personnel. They had been testing new equipment and gathering intelligence on Dominion movements in the border regions. "Captain," called Na Young from the tactical station. She was his weapons officer and one of the finest marksmen in the fleet. "We're receiving a distress signal. Very faint, but it's definitely Federation emergency code." Hyunwoo frowned. They were still deep in disputed space, far from any major shipping lanes. "What would a Federation ship be doing out here? Can you clean up the signal?" Na Young worked at her console for several minutes. "It's not from a ship, sir. It's from a fixed installation, Kepler Station." The captain knew that. Name. Kepler Station was a mining facility that officially belonged to no one. It was home to refugees and workers from a dozen different species, the kind of place the Federation couldn't officially protect, but couldn't abandon either. "What's their situation?" "Hard to tell, the signal's breaking up badly. I can make out references to Dominion forces and immediate assistance required." Dong Hyuk, the ship's weapons specialist, looked up from his console. "Captain, if the Dominion is hitting Kepler Station, there's not much we can do. One destroyer. Against a fleet?" Hyunwoo understood his concern. The Indomitable was fast and well-armed for her size, but she wasn't built to take on multiple enemy warships. If the Dominion was attacking the station in force, a single Federation ship would just be adding to the casualty list. But then he thought about the reports they had gathered during their patrol. Stories of Dominion fleets moving against mixed colonies. Entire settlements going silent. The official word from Federation Command was that these were isolated incidents, but Hyunwoo had seen enough to know better. "Keep trying to raise them," he ordered. "I want to know what we're dealing with." So Young, the chief medical officer, entered the bridge carrying a cup of coffee and a worried expression. She had been monitoring communication traffic for the past hour, picking up fragments of distress calls from several systems. "Captain, I've been listening to the emergency frequencies. There's a lot of chatter about Dominion movements. 3 colonies have gone dark in the past week." Hyunwoo felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. 3 colonies. That wasn't random pirate activity or border skirmishes. That was systematic. "Any response from Federation Command?" "They're calling it unconfirmed reports and isolated incidents. No ships are being dispatched." The captain understood the politics involved. The Federation was still recovering from the last war. The government wanted to avoid any actions that might provoke another conflict with the Dominion, even if that meant abandoning innocent people to their fate. Young suddenly straightened at her console. "Captain, I'm getting a clearer signal. Kepler Station is under attack by a full Dominion fleet, 12 ships including a dreadnought. They're calling for immediate assistance. Distance to their position? 16 hours at maximum speed." Dong Hyuk shook his head. "Sir, our orders are to return to base and avoid contact with Dominion forces. If we divert to help Kepler Station, we'll be in direct violation of Federation Command's instructions." Hyunwoo knew his weapons officer was right. Their mission had been classified, and they were carrying sensitive intelligence that needed to reach Federation headquarters. But he also knew that 16 hours might be too late for the people on Kepler Station. He thought about his own childhood on a frontier colony. The long months waiting for supply ships, never knowing if help would come when danger threatened. The Federation liked to talk about protecting all human settlements, but the reality was different. Some places were too far away, too expensive to defend, too politically complicated to save. Hyejin, he said to the navigator, plot a course for Kepler Station. Maximum speed. Sir? Dong Hyuk looked surprised. Are we really going to take on an entire Dominion fleet? We're going to do what we can. That's what the Federation uniform means. So? Young smiled grimly. The medical bay is ready for whatever we find. As the Indomitable changed course toward Kepler Station, Hyunwoo gathered his senior officers in the briefing room. The space was small and utilitarian, with a holographic display showing the tactical situation. Here's what we know, the captain began. Kepler Station is under attack by a Dominion fleet. They have 3,000 civilians on board, including families and children. The nearest Federation ships are at least 4 days away. Na-young studied the display. 12 enemy ships. Our intelligence reports suggest they're using standard Dominion attack doctrine. Orbital bombardment followed by boarding parties. What are our advantages? Asked Jae-hyun, the ship's engineer. Speed and stealth, Hyunwoo replied. The Indomitable has the latest cloaking technology and improved weapon systems. We can get close without being detected. But once we start shooting, they'll know we're there. Dong Hyuk pointed out. That's right. So we need to make our first shots count. Hyejin brought up a star chart showing the Kepler system. If we approach from behind the system's outer moon, we can use its gravitational field to mask our approach. The enemy fleet will be focused on the station. So-young looked at the casualty projections on her datapad. Captain, even if we somehow win this fight, we're going to take heavy damage. My medical bay can handle maybe 20 serious casualties. If we take more hits than that, I know the risks, Hyunwoo said quietly. But those people don't have anyone else. If we don't try to help them, who will? The room fell silent. Everyone knew the captain was right. The Federation talked about protecting innocent people, but when it came down to it, political considerations often trumped moral ones. I won't order anyone to do this, Hyunwoo continued. If anyone wants to file an objection, I'll note it in the log. This is my decision. Na-young was the first to speak. I'm in, Captain. My weapons are ready. The engines will hold together, Jae-hyun added. I'll make sure of it. One by one, the other officers voiced their agreement. They all knew they might be flying to their deaths, but they also knew it was the right thing to do. Meanwhile, in the Kepler system, the battle for the station was growing desperate. The Dominion fleet had knocked out most of the external defenses and was beginning to land boarding parties. Commander Taemin and his people were fighting room by room, corridor by corridor, but they were being pushed back steadily. Jin-ah, the young communications officer, was holed up in the secondary control room with a handful of other survivors. She had been trying for hours to reach anyone who might help, but the long-range array was damaged and most of her signals weren't getting through. Any luck? Asked Wee-jin, a maintenance worker who had volunteered to help defend the communications center. Jin-ah shook her head. I got one transmission out about 4 hours ago, but I don't know if anyone received it. The Dominion is jamming most of our frequencies. Outside the control room, they could hear the sound of weapons fire and shouting. The Dominion soldiers were methodical in their advance, checking every room and corridor. It was only a matter of time before they reached the communications center. Keep trying, Wee-jin said. Maybe someone out there is listening. In the main refugee center, hundreds of civilians huddled together in the reinforced mining complex. The Vithrek elder Krixth was trying to keep the children calm by telling them old stories about heroes and adventures. His forearms gestured dramatically as he spoke, his voice carrying over the sound of distant explosions. Long ago, Krixth said, when the galaxy was young, there were warriors who would travel from star to star, helping those in need. They were not the strongest or the smartest, but they never gave up when people needed help. A young Lumini child, her crystal body glowing faintly with fear, asked, Are the warriors coming to help us? Krixth looked toward the reinforced ceiling, as if he could see through it to the stars above. I don't know, little one, but warriors have a way of appearing when you need them most. The crystal singer Veltar joined her harmonic voice to Crixith's storytelling, creating a melody that helped ease the terror of the waiting families. Even the Nethel families, breathing their special atmosphere through their suits, seemed calmed by the music. Above them, the battle continued to rage. Boram and her security teams had set up a series of choke points in the main corridors, forcing the Dominion soldiers to fight for every meter. But ammunition was running low, and more enemy troops kept coming. Min Ho, the former military engineer, had rigged explosive charges from mining equipment. His improvised bombs had taken out several squads of Dominion soldiers, but he was running out of materials to work with. "How much longer can we hold them?" Boram asked as they fell back to another defensive position. Min Ho checked his remaining supplies. "Maybe 2 hours if we're lucky. After that, we'll be down to hand-to-hand combat." Yujin was still working frantically in the main control room, trying to restore power to the S. The Dominion boarding parties moved through Kepler Station like a plague of metal and death. Their black armor gleamed under the emergency lighting as they swept from corridor to corridor, room by room, hunting down anyone who dared to resist their advance. Commander Taemin crouched behind an overturned table in what used to be the station's main cafeteria. Around him, a dozen defenders clutched weapons that seemed pitiful against the enemy's advanced gear. Most were mining tools converted for combat, plasma cutters, industrial lasers, and explosive charges meant for breaking rocks, not fighting wars. The sound of heavy boots echoed through the nearby corridors. The Dominion soldiers weren't trying to be quiet. They wanted the defenders to know they were coming, to spread fear and panic through the station. "How many more do you think there are?" whispered Subin, a medical technician who had volunteered to fight despite having no military training. Tae-min checked his weapon, a mining laser that could cut through metal but had limited range and power. "Too many. But we're not here to win. We're here to buy time." Time for what, he didn't say. They all knew the truth. Help wasn't coming. The nearest Federation ships were days away, and the long-range communications were still down. Every minute they held out was one more minute the civilians in the shelters got to live. But Timon had learned something important about the human spirit during these long hours of fighting. When people had something worth protecting, they found strength they didn't know they had. The workers and technicians defending Kepler Station weren't soldiers, but they fought like heroes. Min Ho appeared from a side corridor, his engineer's jumpsuit torn and dirty. He carried a backpack full of improvised explosives made from mining charges. His knowledge of guerrilla tactics from his military days had been invaluable in slowing down the Dominion advance. "I've rigged charges in the main power junction," he reported quietly. "When they try to take the generator room, they're going to get a surprise." "How big a surprise?" Taemin asked. Min Ho grinned grimly, big enough to make them think twice about rushing forward. The sound of weapons fire erupted from the next corridor. Boram's voice crackled over the communication system. "Enemy squad advancing on Section C. We're falling back to checkpoint 7. Taemin knew what that meant. The Dominion forces were pushing deeper into the station, getting closer to the civilian shelters with every hour. Soon they would have no choice but to make a final stand in the mining complex where the refugees were hiding. "Move out," he ordered his team. "We need to reinforce Boram's position." They moved through the station's maintenance tunnels, crawling through spaces barely wide enough for a person. The tunnels had become highways for the defenders, allowing them to move unseen and strike at the Dominion forces from unexpected directions as they crawled through the narrow spaces. Taemin thought about the letters he had received from families on other colonies over the years. Stories of Dominion attacks where no help had come. Entire settlements wiped out because they had made the mistake of allowing different species to live together. The Federation government called these incidents regrettable losses and promised that such things would not happen again. But Taemin knew the truth. The Federation could not protect every frontier settlement, and the Dominion knew it. They emerged from the maintenance tunnel near Checkpoint 7, where Boram had set up a defensive position behind shipping containers and mining equipment. Her security team was down to 8 people and several of them were wounded. "Status report," Taemin said as he slid into cover beside her. We've been holding them off for the past hour, but they're bringing up heavy weapons. Our cover won't last much longer." As if to prove her point, a massive explosion shook the corridor. One of the shipping containers twisted and fell as a Dominion plasma cannon tore through it like paper. "Fall back to the next position," Taemin ordered. But Minho held up a hand. "Wait, let me try something first." He pulled out a remote detonator and smiled. "Remember those charges I mentioned?" The explosion that followed was enormous. The entire corridor shook as Minho's improvised bombs destroyed the power junction and sent electrical fires racing through the walls. Emergency lighting failed throughout that section of the station, plunging the Dominion advance into darkness. "Now we fall back," Minho said with satisfaction. Far away from the fighting, in the reinforced mining complex that served as the main refugee center, nearly 800 civilians waited in the darkness. The power failures had knocked out most of the lighting, leaving them with only a few emergency lamps and the soft glow from Lumeni crystal singers. Crixith, the old Vithrak foreman, moved among the families with calm efficiency. His people were naturally adapted to dark environments, and he used this advantage to help organize the refugees and keep them calm. "The children should stay in the center of the group," he said to a cluster of human families. "If the worst happens, the adults will form a protective circle around them." A young human mother clutched her baby closer. "Do you really think they'll break through?" Crixith's compound eyes reflected the dim light as he considered his answer. He could have lied, could have offered false hope. But these people deserved the truth. "The humans defending us are brave," he said finally. "Braver than any warriors I have ever known. They will fight until the very end to protect us, but there are many enemies and not many defenders." The crystal singer Veltar approached, her tall form shimmering with internal light. "The children are frightened. They need something to help them sleep." Crixith nodded and moved toward the center of the group where dozens of children from different species huddled together. Human children sat next to young Vithrak, who clicked their mandibles nervously. Lumeni youngsters glowed brighter when they were scared, creating patterns of light that danced across the walls. "Let me tell you a story," Crixith said, settling down among them. "A story about warriors who come from the darkness when hope seems lost." The children gathered around him, drawn by the promise of a tale that might help them forget their fear for a little while. "Long ago, when my people first traveled to the stars, we heard legends about a species that was different from all others. They were not the strongest or the fastest or the smartest, but they had something special inside them, something that made them fight for others even when they had no hope of winning." A young Lumeni girl raised her hand. "What made them special?" "They believed that all people deserved to live in freedom, no matter what species they were or where they came from, and when someone threatened innocent people, these warriors would come from the darkness to help." "Are they real?" asked a human boy. Crixth looked around at the children's faces, seeing hope mixed with fear in their eyes. "Some say they are just stories, but I have lived for many years and traveled to many worlds, and I have learned that sometimes when you need them most, heroes appear in the darkness." Meanwhile, on the bridge of the UES Indomitable, Captain Hyunwoo watched the tactical display showing the Dominion fleet surrounding Kepler Station. His ship had managed to approach to within 30,000 kilometers without being detected. But now came the difficult part. "Weapons status?" he asked quietly. "All systems ready," Na-Young reported. "I have targeting solutions for the enemy flagship and 3 cruisers." "Engineering status?" Jae-hyun's voice came through the intercom. From the engine room, "All systems running at optimal efficiency. The new reactor modifications are working perfectly." Hyunwoo studied the enemy formation. 12 ships against 1. By any rational military analysis, this was suicide. But sometimes rational analysis missed the most important factors. "Donghyuk, what's your assessment of their defensive posture?" The weapons specialist studied his displays. "They're configured for bombardment, not fleet combat. Their shields are focused downward toward the station. If we can hit them from above and behind, we might actually have a chance." Hyunwoo finished. Hyejin looked up from the navigation console. "Captain, I'm detecting increased activity. Around the station, it looks like they're preparing for a final assault. Through the ship's sensors, they could see Dominion transport ships moving into position. The enemy was getting ready to overwhelm the remaining defenders with sheer numbers. Time. Estimate until they breach the civilian shelters, Hyunwoo asked. 2 hours, maybe less. So Young entered the bridge carrying medical supplies. The medical bay is ready for casualties. I've also prepared emergency medical kits for away teams. Hyunwoo nodded. If they somehow managed to drive off the Dominion fleet, there would be wounded people on the station who needed immediate help. All hands, this is the captain, he announced over the ship's communication system. In a few minutes, we're going to engage a superior enemy force. Our job is to give the people on Kepler Station a fighting chance. Some of you might be wondering if this is the right thing to do. He paused, thinking about the reports they had gathered during their patrol. Stories of colonies that had been abandoned to their fate. Families that had died because no one was willing to help them. I want you to know that what we're about to do defines what it means to wear a Federation uniform. We don't fight for territory or politics or strategic advantage. We fight because someone needs help, and we're the only ones in position to give it. On. The first rail cannon shot from the UES Indomitable struck the Dominion flagship like the hammer of an angry god. The massive projectile, accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed, punched through the enemy's rear shields as if they were made of tissue paper. Explosions blossomed along the dreadnought's hull as secondary systems overloaded and failed. On the flagship's bridge, Admiral Kesseron staggered as his ship shook under the impact. Warning lights flashed red across every console and damage. Reports flooded in from all sections. What was that? He demanded. Unknown contact, sir, his sensor officer reported. Single ship emerging from behind the outer moon. It's Federation. Admiral Kesseron felt a cold smile spread across his face. One Federation ship against his entire fleet? This would be over quickly. All ships target the newcomer. Destroy it immediately. But as the Dominion fleet began to turn toward this new threat, the Federation ship disappeared from their sensors like a ghost, melting back into the shadows. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Hyunwoo watched the chaos spreading through the enemy formation with grim satisfaction. The first shot had done exactly what he hoped, created confusion and fear among ships that had expected easy victory. Cloaking device engaged, Na-young reported. They've lost us on their sensors. Good. Take us around to their port flank. Target the cruiser that's closest to the station. The Indomitable moved through space like a predator stalking its prey. Her advanced stealth systems made her nearly invisible, while her crew prepared for the next strike in their hit-and-run campaign. Jae-hyun's voice came through the intercom from engineering. Captain, the new reactor modifications are working perfectly. We can maintain cloak and charge weapons simultaneously. Excellent. Dong-hyuk, how are our rail cannon charges? 90% and rising, sir. We'll be ready to fire again in 30 seconds. Hyunwoo studied the tactical display, choosing his next target carefully. The Dominion ships were powerful, but they were designed for bombarding helpless targets, not fighting a mobile enemy that could strike from any direction. There, he said, pointing to a heavy cruiser that was moving to support the damaged flagship. That one next. The Indomitable dropped her cloak just long enough to fire, sending another devastating rail cannon shot into the enemy cruiser's engine section. The ship's reactor containment failed, creating a brilliant explosion that lit up the darkness of space. Then the Federation ship vanished again, leaving the Dominion fleet firing at empty space. On Kepler Station, the defenders felt the vibrations as the Dominion bombardment suddenly stopped. Commander Tae-min looked up from his position behind the makeshift barricade, confused by the sudden silence. What's happening? Bo-ram asked. Why did they stop shooting? Wee-jin, who had been monitoring the station's external sensors, suddenly shouted in excitement. There's another ship out there, a Federation ship. It just took out one of the Dominion cruisers. A cheer went up from the exhausted defenders. Help had come at last, just when they thought all hope was lost. But Tae-min knew the situation was still desperate. One ship, no matter how advanced, couldn't take on an entire fleet. Don't celebrate yet, he warned. We're still outnumbered 12-1. But even as he spoke, he felt a surge of hope. Someone had heard their distress call. Someone had come to help. They weren't abandoned after all. In the refugee center, Crix heard the commotion from the defenders and understood what it meant. He looked down at the children gathered around him, their faces bright with sudden hope. The warriors, whispered the young Lumeni girl. They came from the darkness, just like in the story. Crixith felt tears forming in his compound eyes. Yes, little one, just like in the story. Above them, the battle in space was far from over. Admiral Kesran had reorganized his fleet into a defensive formation, with the remaining ships protecting each other's flanks. But the Federation ship was like nothing he had ever fought before. How is one ship doing this? He demanded of his tactical officer. Their stealth technology is beyond anything in our databases, sir. And their weapons, I've never seen rail cannons with that much power. It doesn't matter. We still outnumber them 10-1. Spread the fleet out. Force them to come to us. But Captain Hyunwoo had no intention of fighting a conventional battle. Instead, he used the Indomitable's speed and stealth to conduct a campaign of terror against the enemy fleet. Take us behind that destroyer, he ordered. Hit their engine section and get out before they can return fire. The Indomitable struck, again and again, each attack precisely planned to cause maximum damage. A rail cannon shot to disable engines here, a missile barrage to destroy weapon systems there. The Federation ship was like a shark among smaller fish, striking fast and disappearing before the enemy could respond. Na Young's fingers danced across her weapons console as she targeted another enemy ship. Direct hit on the destroyer's main reactor. She's dead in space. That's 3 down, Dong Hyuk reported. 9 to go. But Hyunwoo knew they couldn't keep this up forever. The Indomitable was taking damage from near misses, and her cloaking system was starting to overheat from constant use. Engineering report, he called. We're running hot, Jae-hyun replied. The cloak is at 85% efficiency and falling. If we keep pushing it, we'll start showing up on their sensors. How much longer can you give me? Maybe 20 minutes before we have to shut down and let the system cool. 20 minutes to finish off 9 enemy ships. It seemed impossible, but Hyunwoo had learned that sometimes impossible was just another word for difficult. On the Dominion flagship, Admiral Kesseran was growing desperate. His fleet was being picked apart by an enemy he couldn't see or catch. 3 ships were destroyed, 2 more were crippled, and the Federation vessel showed no signs of slowing down. Sir, his communications officer reported, the remaining cruiser, captains are requesting permission to withdraw. Denied, Kesseran snarled. We do not retreat from a single enemy ship, no matter what tricks it employs. But even as he spoke, another explosion lit up the darkness as the Indomitable claimed. Another victim. The Federation ship seemed to be everywhere at once, striking from impossible angles and vanishing before return fire could be coordinated. There has to be a way to stop it, the Admiral muttered. No ship is invincible. His tactical officer studied the sensor readings from the attacks. Sir, I think I see a pattern. The Federation ship has to drop its cloak every time it fires. If we could predict where it will appear next, do it. Set up an ambush. The Dominion fleet began to reposition, trying to anticipate where the Indomitable would strike next. But Hyunwoo had noticed their movement and realized what they were attempting. They're trying to set a trap, he told his crew. Time to change. Tactics. Instead of continuing the hit-and-run attacks, the Indomitable suddenly accelerated directly toward the center of the Dominion formation. It was an insane move that caught the enemy completely off guard. All weapons, continuous fire, Hyunwoo ordered. Don't give them time to coordinate their response. The Federation ship blazed through the enemy formation like a comet, her weapons firing in all directions. Rail cannons and missile launchers worked overtime, turning the space around Kepler Station into a deadly light show. Chang-min, the gun commander, coordinated the weapons fire with deadly precision. Target the command ships first. Take out their ability to coordinate. One by one, the Dominion vessels fell to the Indomitable's assault. But the Federation ship was taking damage too. Her shields flickered under enemy fire, and several hull breaches vented atmosphere into space. Hull breach. On Deck 7, So Young reported from the medical bay. I'm treating casualties from the weapons section. Can we continue fighting? Hyun-woo asked. Yes, sir, but we can't take much more punishment. The battle reached its climax when the Indomitable found herself facing the Dominion flagship in a direct confrontation. The two ships circled each other like ancient gladiators, trading devastating blows that lit up the darkness of space. Admiral Kesseran stood on his bridge, watching the Federation ship through the view screen. He had to admit a grudging respect for his opponent. This single ship had destroyed or crippled most of his fleet through sheer audacity and skill. Sir, his weapons officer reported, our main guns are targeted on the Federation ship. One salvo should finish them. Kesseran nodded. Fire. But at that exact moment, Hyun-woo made a decision that defined everything humans stood for in the galaxy. Instead of trying to escape or return fire, he pointed his ship directly at Kepler Station. All power to engines, he ordered. Put us between the station and that dreadnought. The Indomitable's crew understood what their captain was asking. He wanted them to use their ship as a shield, absorbing the enemy's fire to protect the civilians on the station. Sir, Na-young said quietly, that will put us directly in their line of fire. I know. Do it anyway. The Federation ship positioned herself between the Dominion flagship and Kepler Station, just as the enemy fired their main batteries. The massive energy beams struck the Indomitable's shields and hull, but they didn't reach the station. Explosions rocked the Federation ship as her systems overloaded under the punishment. But she held together, her crew refusing to abandon their post even as their ship burned around them. Damage report, Hyun. The silence that followed the battle was almost as shocking as the noise that had preceded it. For the first time in over 18 hours, the corridors of Kepler Station were quiet. No weapons fire, no explosions, no sound of marching boots coming to destroy everything the defenders held dear. Commander Taemin stood in the main corridor, looking at the sealed door that led to the refugee center. Behind that door were 800 people who were alive because a single Federation ship had appeared from the darkness to help them. He could hardly believe it was real. Commander, Boram called from her position near the observation window. You need to see this. Taemin walked to the window and looked out at the space around the station. The wreckage of several Dominion ships drifted in the darkness, their hulls split open and their lights extinguished forever. But what caught his attention was the Federation ship. The UES Indomitable was barely recognizable. Her hull was torn open in dozens of places, with atmosphere and debris venting into space. Fires burned throughout her structure, creating an eerie light show against the stars. It was amazing that anyone could still be alive aboard her. Are they responding to communications? Taemin asked. Yu-jin, who had been working frantically to restore the station's systems, looked up from her console. I'm getting intermittent signals. Their communication array is badly damaged, but someone is definitely alive over there. Can we help them? I've been thinking about that. Our docking bays are damaged, but we might be able to get some repair teams across in maintenance pods. Taemin nodded. Do it. These people saved our lives. The least we can do is try to save theirs. Throughout the station, the news spread quickly. The attack was over. The Dominion fleet had retreated. They were safe. But even as people celebrated, they knew that their safety had come at a terrible price for the crew of the Federation ship. In the refugee center, Crixith was still surrounded by children when the news arrived. The old Vithrak foreman felt a deep satisfaction as he looked at their faces. These young ones would grow up knowing that there really were heroes in the galaxy. Warriors who came from the darkness when hope seemed lost. What happens to the warriors now? Asked the young Lumeni girl, her crystal body glowing with curiosity. Crixith considered the question carefully. Now we help them, just as they helped us. That is what friends do for each other. Veltar, the crystal singer, began a new harmony. Not the scared, desperate music she had sung during the battle, but something joyful and triumphant. The other Lumeni in the center joined their voices to hers, creating a song of victory and hope that echoed through the corridors. On the bridge of the Indomitable, Captain Hyunwoo struggled to maintain consciousness as his crew worked to keep their ship alive. The collision with the Dominion flagship had done massive damage, but the Federation vessel was still intact enough to support life. Medical teams to all sections, So Young announced over the intercom. Despite being wounded herself, she was coordinating treatment for the injured throughout the ship. Priority goes to crew members in critical condition. Na-young limped to her captain's side, her arm hanging at an awkward angle. Sir, we're receiving a transmission from Kepler Station. They want to send repair teams to help us. Hyunwoo smiled weakly. Tell them we accept gratefully, but warn them that our ship is in bad shape. I don't want anyone else getting hurt because of us. Aye, sir. Jae-hyun's voice crackled through the damaged intercom system. Captain, I've managed to stabilize the main reactor, but we're running on emergency power only. Life support is holding, but just barely. How long until the nearest Federation ships arrive? According to our last communication with Command, at least 4 days. Maybe longer if they have to reroute ships from other assignments. 4 days. Hyunwoo wondered if his ship could hold together that long. But then he thought about the people they had saved, and he knew they would find a way to survive. They had come too far to give up now. The next several hours were a blur of activity as repair teams from Kepler Station worked alongside the Indomitable's crew to patch the worst damage. The station's engineers, led by Yu Jin, brought supplies and expertise that made the difference between life and death for many of the ship's systems. Min Ho, the former military engineer who had helped defend the station, proved invaluable in jury-rigging solutions to problems that should have required a shipyard to fix. His improvised repairs weren't pretty, but they worked. You know, he told Jae-hyun as they worked side by side in the Federation ship's engine room, I've spent most of my life fixing mining equipment, but the principles are the same. Make it work with what you have, not with what you wish you had. Jae-hyun nodded, impressed by the older man's ingenuity. Where did you learn to work with Federation technology? Same place you learn anything. Useful, Minho replied with a grin. By getting my hands dirty and figuring it out as I go. In the ship's medical bay, So Young worked alongside Subin and other medical personnel from the station to treat the wounded. The cooperation between human and alien medical staff was seamless, each species contributing their unique knowledge and skills to save lives. The Vithrak have an excellent understanding of circulatory systems, So Young noted as she watched one of the insectoid medics treat a human crewman. Their techniques could revolutionize trauma medicine. And your surgical methods are far more advanced than anything we have on the station, Subin replied. Maybe when this is over, we can share knowledge. I'd like that. As the repair work continued, stories began to spread throughout both the station and the ship. Stories of incredible bravery and sacrifice. Stories of people who had risked everything to protect others. The crew of the Indomitable learned about Minho's improvised explosives that had slowed the Dominion advance. They heard about Boram's security teams holding impossible positions against overwhelming odds. They discovered how Commander Taemin had kept hope alive even when the situation seemed hopeless. In return, the people of Kepler Station learned about Captain Hyunwoo's decision to disobey orders and come to their aid. They heard about Na-young's precision shooting that had disabled enemy ships with minimal damage to civilian areas. They found out how Chang-min had coordinated the weapons systems to maximize effect while minimizing risk to the station. But perhaps the most important story was the simplest one. When innocent people needed help, these humans had come without hesitation. They had risked their lives and their ship for people they had never met, simply because it was the right thing to do. 2 days after the battle, a remarkable ceremony took place in the station's main assembly area. Representatives from every species that lived on Kepler Station gathered together to honor the crew of the Indomitable. Krixth spoke for the Vithrak community. In our oldest legends, we tell of warriors who travel between the stars, helping those in need. We thought these were just stories. Now we know they are real and they wear Federation uniforms. Veltar sang a crystal harmony that had never been heard before, a song composed specifically to honor human courage. The music seemed to capture something essential about the human spirit, the willingness to fight for others, even when the odds were impossible. The Nethel representative, speaking through his atmospheric suit's translator, said simply, "We came to this station as refugees, fleeing persecution on our homeworld. Now we know that some people in this galaxy will fight to protect refugees, even if they are not the same species. This gives us hope for the future." When it came time for the humans to speak, Commander Taemin found himself struggling for words. "How do you thank someone for saving not just your life, but the lives of everyone you care about?" "Captain Hyunwoo," he said finally. "Your crew came to our aid when no help was expected. You risked everything for people you had never met. I don't know if we can ever repay that debt." Hyunwoo, supported by a walking brace but determined to attend the ceremony, shook his head. "There's no debt, Commander. This is what humans do. This is what the Federation uniform represents. When someone needs help, we help. When someone is in danger, we protect them. It doesn't matter if they're human or alien, Federation citizens or refugees. It only matters that they need help." He looked around at the faces in the assembly. Human faces, Vithrak faces, Lumeni faces, Nethel faces. All of them alive because his crew had made the choice to do what was right instead of what was safe. "Besides," he continued with a slight smile, "you didn't just survive the attack, you inspired us. Your people fought impossible odds to protect each other. You showed us what courage really looks like." Commander Taemin stepped forward with a small object in his hands. It was a memorial stone, carved by Lumeni artisans from crystal that had been found in the station's mining operations. Engraved on its surface were the names of everyone who had died defending Kepler Station, human and alien alike. "This is for your ship," Taemin said, "so that your crew will always remember what you fought for here, and so that future generations will know about the day humans and aliens stood together against those who would destroy us." Hyunwoo accepted the memorial stone with deep emotion. It was simple and beautiful, reflecting light in patterns that seemed to dance across its surface. But more than that, it represented something important about the future of the galaxy.